He didn't ask permission,
because somehow he had already asked.
and I had already answered. Not with words, but with silence that said yes, with breath that stayed, with eyes that didn't look away. Time didn't pass. It unfolded, and in that unfolding, I remembered what it felt like to be known, not consumed, to be chosen, not claimed. It was late, and I was about to head upstairs when something caught my eye through the front window, just across the street. His bedroom light flicked on, and he wasn't alone. I stopped mid-step, one hand still on the banister. A woman stood near the window, already halfway undressed. Her dress slipped off her shoulders like it had happened 100 times before. She leaned into him, hands on his chest while he just stood there, calm and still, like he had all the time in the world. "Brooke," I called, my voice low but urgent. "You need to see this." She wandered in with a blanket wrapped around her, hair messy from the couch. "What?" I pointed without turning. "He's at it again." She sighed. "Haley, come on." "No, seriously, look." She stepped beside me, hesitant. But when she glanced out the window, her eyes widened. Through the glass, we could see everything. Her back was against the wall now, his hand braced beside her head. He leaned in, whispering something. She laughed, then went quiet as he slowly lifted her thigh, guiding her closer. Brooke covered her mouth. "We shouldn't be watching this." "And yet," I said, grinning. We both stayed there, motionless, pressed close to the window like teenagers spying on something we weren't supposed to see. He moved slowly, like he'd done this 1,000 times, like her reactions didn't surprise him anymore. She clung to him, her head rolling back, legs shaky before she even moved. When he turned her around, she held the window frame like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Brooke shifted. "Is that the same girl from last week?" "Nope," I said. "That's a new one. 5th, maybe 6th this month." Brooke shook her head, but her eyes didn't leave the window. "That's insane." "I'm telling you," I whispered. "They come in confident, laughing, flirting, and leave looking like they've just been through something they'll never forget." We watched her tense again. Her mouth dropped open, jaw slack, eyes fluttering. He barely moved, but whatever he was doing had her holding on like her whole body was reacting to it. Brooke turned away, flustered. "Okay, that's enough." I didn't move. "You can't tell me you're not a little curious." She sat down on the armrest, clutching her blanket tighter. "I mean, he is kind of impressive." "Kind of," I said. "That man is a walking mystery. Mid-50s, barely says a word, never brags, and somehow has every woman in this neighborhood leaving his place like they just stepped out of a dream." Brooke bit her lip. I smiled. "I want to know what that's like." She laughed nervously. "You're not serious." "Oh, I'm very serious." "Not tonight," I added. "But tomorrow? I might go over there.
Say hi.
Introduce myself." "You're going to what? Knock on his door and ask for a sample?" "Maybe I'll borrow sugar," I said, grinning. "Or ask if he needs help carrying something heavy. Whatever works." Brooke stood, blanket still clutched tight. "You're out of your mind." "I know," I said. "But admit it, you're wondering too."
She didn't answer.
Just pulled the blanket tighter and looked away. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with its usual routines. Joggers on the sidewalk, sprinklers hissing to life, dogs barking in yards too small for their energy. I sat at the kitchen table, stirring cream into my coffee, still thinking about what we'd seen. Brooke hadn't mentioned it since, but I caught her glancing out the window twice while pretending to scroll her phone. "Big plans today?" she asked without looking up. "I might walk over," I said casually. "See if he's home." She raised an eyebrow. "You're really doing it?" "Why not? It's just a neighborly hello."
Uh-huh.
"And you picked out that dress just to be friendly?" I looked down at the sundress, low cut, loose in all the right places. "It's hot out." Brooke laughed, shook her head, and went back to her phone. "Be careful." I stepped outside with my heart in my throat. It wasn't nerves, it was anticipation. There was something about him I couldn't explain, something magnetic and impossible to ignore. His front yard was quiet, but his truck was parked in the driveway. I hesitated, then knocked. A pause. Then footsteps. When he opened the door, he looked exactly the same as the night before. Calm, collected, eyes unreadable. He was wearing a plain t-shirt and jeans, his posture relaxed but alert. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just looked at me. "Hi," I said too quickly. "Sorry to bother you. I thought I'd come introduce myself. I live across the street." A moment of silence. Then he nodded. "I know." I froze, unsure what to say next. He stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in." There was no invitation in his voice. It was a command dressed as politeness. I followed without a word. His house was quiet. Sparse furniture, clean floors, the faint scent of something warm. Maybe cedarwood, maybe tobacco. Everything felt deliberate. Like nothing here was an accident. "I didn't catch your name," I said. He turned to face me. "David." I nodded. "I'm Haley." Another silence. Then, "I know." The way he said it made my skin tingle. Not in fear, in curiosity. There was something behind those eyes that felt ancient. Like he'd seen everything already, and nothing surprised him anymore. We stood there, the silence thick between us. Then, without warning, he asked, "Why are you really here?" I swallowed. "To meet you." "Try again." I hesitated. "Because I saw what you did last night. With her." His expression didn't change. "And I want to know why they all come back." He walked closer. Just a step. But it felt like the air shifted. "They don't come back," he said. "They don't need to." I blinked. "Then why do they look the way they do?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He just watched me, and for a second, I felt completely exposed, not embarrassed but unveiled. Something about his presence made everything else fall away. The noise, the shame, the reasons I gave myself for coming here. I didn't want a story. I wanted an experience. "Would you like some water?" he asked. I nodded. He walked into the kitchen and came back with a glass. I drank it too fast, suddenly aware of how dry my mouth was. He took the glass from me, his fingers brushing mine. The contact was brief, but electric. He didn't say anything else. Just stepped back, waiting, watching, letting the silence do the work. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. But I did. I walked back across the street like someone emerging from a trance, the world brighter than before, louder somehow. Brooke was waiting on the porch, pretending to read. She looked up as I approached, her eyes sharp. "So," she asked. I shrugged. "He's intense." That's one word. "I don't know what it is," I admitted. "It's like he sees through everything. Like he knows the part of me I don't even talk about." Brooke raised a brow. "You've known him 10 minutes. And yet..." She closed her book. "Just promise me something. Whatever it is, don't get in over your head." I gave her a faint smile. Too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't restlessness. It was remembering. Replaying the way he had looked at me, not with desire, not with pity, but with awareness. The kind of look that makes you question what you've been hiding all your life.
And why?
I tossed, turned, got up, paced, sat on the edge of the bed. My house felt too small. My skin too tight. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be in that silence again. That space he created just by existing. By 2 a.m., I was back outside. I didn't even knock this time. I just stood across the street, staring at the faint light in his window.
Hoping. Daring.
The door opened without a sound. He stood there in the dark, a shadow against the soft glow behind him. No words. No questions. I walked forward slowly, like approaching something sacred. Inside, everything was the same, calm, controlled. Except this time it was different. This time, I knew what I wanted. I wasn't there to observe. I was there to be undone. He led me to the same seat. Sat across from me. Watched. No smile. No pretense. Just
Truth.
And I started talking. About my marriage. About how I felt invisible. How I used to feel radiant, Once, not beautiful, not perfect, just alive. How no one saw that anymore, and how maybe I didn't either. He didn't interrupt. When I paused, he leaned forward and said something that felt like it had been waiting years to be spoken aloud. You never disappeared. You were just waiting to be seen again.
I didn't cry.
I breathed. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't too much. Or too little. Just
Me.
then he touched my hand. Not with hunger. Not with urgency. But with reverence. Like my story deserved to be held gently.
The air changed.
My heartbeat didn't spike. It slowed. Grounded. Anchored. I didn't feel swept away. I felt returned. He stood, offered his hand. And I followed. He led me through a hallway I hadn't noticed before. Every step felt like surrendering a layer, not of clothes, but of past versions of myself. Versions that tried too hard. That stayed silent. That smiled when they wanted to scream. There were no candles. No music. Just breath and stillness. The room was dim, yet everything about it felt illuminated. He didn't ask permission. Because somehow he had already asked. And I had already answered. Time didn't pass. It unfolded. And in that unfolding, I remembered what it felt like to be known without being consumed.
To
be chosen, not claimed. We didn't say much afterward. He wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and we sat side by side, watching the light shift on the ceiling as dawn crept in. I told him about the first time I stopped dancing, not literally, but emotionally. When I stopped moving freely because the world began to watch and measure. He said, maybe it's time to dance again. It sounded ridiculous. Profound.
both.
By the time I slipped back across the street, the sky was blushing with morning. Brooke was waiting, coffee in hand. She didn't say anything, just handed me the mug, her eyebrows doing the talking. I smiled, but not with guilt, not with shame, just understanding. She nodded. You're different. I know. Days passed. I didn't see him, but I felt him in how I stood straighter, in how I no longer flinched at my reflection, in how I allowed silence to speak instead of filling it with apologies. Then one day I knocked. No answer. The house looked the same, but something had shifted. I peeked through the window. Empty. Not abandoned, just complete. As if whatever needed to happen here had happened. He was gone. No goodbye. No forwarding address. Just absence. But it didn't feel like loss. It felt like a gift unwrapped. A lesson closed. A part of me finally returned. I walked away slower than I arrived. Not searching anymore. Not aching. Just whole. That night I danced. Alone in my living room. The music wasn't loud. My feet weren't sure. But I moved. And I didn't care who was watching. Sometimes, the people who enter our lives for the briefest moments are the ones who return us to ourselves. They don't stay, because they're not meant to. They awaken something, then vanish. But what they leave behind is everything. If this story touched something inside you, leave a comment. Tell me, have you ever been changed by someone who simply saw you? And if you felt anything while watching, subscribe and stay with us. There are more stories waiting to find you. If stories like this keep you on the edge, hit that like button, subscribe,